Connections are vital to the human experience. Whether it's connecting on a personal level or for business, communicating effectively and understanding someone's perspective can be the difference between success and failure. Through her time as a business consultant, the host of a radio morning show, and hosting events, Keisha Paul has figured out how to find the story behind a situation, utilizing that skill of connection to find success. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for having me back. And you're right, it's been a couple years. And because it was during the pandemic, it's almost like a couple decades, like time's been funny.
Yep.
So thanks again. I'm Keisha Paul. The last time we spoke, the only thing in my byline was that I was a business consultant. I worked a lot with newcomers coming new to Manitoba, but also new to the country. And I used to work in England. I've lived in the States. I've lived in Canada, lived in England, and back and forth to the Caribbean. And so that was kind of my diversity of experience. And then through a random set of events, just as random as the pandemic was, during the pandemic, I was able to get an internship at CBC. It was always a dream of mine to explore media. And that took me to being the host of the weekend morning show, which was absolutely incredible, phenomenal, like a roller coaster ride of emotions, up, down. Don't even get me started because I was afraid of being on camera, which is crazy. like these little things that we're looking into sometimes give me anxiety. So that was a whole nother thing, let alone being recorded. But in any case, I've since from then on, it was a fantastic experience and we can get more into it later. But I was able to because I was hosting a radio show, I was able to kind of parlay that into hosting events. People had asked me like, hey, like we're having this type of event or we're doing this type of training. We would like you to facilitate. We'd like you to be the host and keep the energy at a certain level and keep people engaged. And it was something that I had never thought of doing in real life. Then I did it and I really loved it. So it's kind of continuing on that entrepreneurial roller coaster ride of emotions, but it's been really great.
Of course. Well, that's so exciting. To touch on that point you were mentioning of like being nervous about certain things, it's like you were going all over the world helping businesses there. It's like, well, if I can have conversations with business owners at those high levels, surely doing a talk show or something like that on CBC shouldn't be any problem at all. But then you get those jitters, and because I know for myself, doing radio interviews is nothing for me at this point. But the second there's a camera involved, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Or the second I know it's live, it's just, I get that pit in my stomach. And it's just so interesting how, though some skills should translate, it's a new experience and experiences can be scary sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a funny thing because you don't know it until you do it. And I would caution everybody, like that whole idea of like, oh, I don't want to get outside my comfort zone. And when you really think about it, like nothing really happens in the comfort zone. You probably like eat potato chips and watch some good Netflix in the comfort zone, but you don't do anything big. And I've kind of had to get used to being afraid and doing it anyway. But I'm the type of person, I relate to you completely. You put a camera in my face or like, I don't even take selfies. So it's kind of like the world has progressed where it's not real unless you're recording it. Even radio shows now are live streamed. So it's kind of like you have to keep up with this fast pace. And at a certain point, I think for me to get through some of those jitters, I had to let go of trying to be perfect or even trying to be good. My bar was trying to finish, like just finish. And that is a huge stride ahead because the day before I'd never done it. Now all I need to do is finish, forget about being good. And that helped me a lot, to be honest.
I recently spoke with an empowerment coach talking about setting goals in life and achieving those goals. And sometimes, goals can be big and they can be lofty, but not all goals can have to be that. They can be small improvements in your life. And when you're mentioning, getting out of your comfort zone, it is really important. It's very easy to stagnate in life. I noticed myself that, especially over winter, You kind of huddle in, you get prepared, and you really don't want to do anything like, that might be a little bit uncomfortable. But sometimes to get new experiences and or find a new place in life, you got to take those chances.
Absolutely. Yeah. I realize for me, there's times where I really want something. I've heard other people talk about it as the terror barrier. And it literally comes right. You make a big lofty goal and
Hmm.
you're so excited about it and you're rearing to go. And then as soon as you have to take the first major step towards it, it's like everything is coming in between you and that thing, whether it's your taxes or taking grandma to doctor's appointment or whatever. And then some things start coming in that actually aren't that important. And I'm realizing, oh, I'm distracting myself from the thing I want to do because I'm actually terrified of doing it and failing or being seen. That's a huge one for me, and not knowing what the heck I'm doing. And so I know now, even though it feels horrible, the terror barrier makes me know that this is something that's really important to me and this is something I actually want. It's a good thing. It just feels like garbage.
Exactly. So, Keisha, why don't we go through those steps? There's kind of three big things: consulting, CBC, now hosting. From your business consulting, what sort of skills and things translated over to that role of CBC, and why did you want to take that opportunity?
Great question. I think it was the love of people was one of the biggest ones. That was the biggest transferable skill. I loved when I was consulting, connecting with my clients and also building them up, encouraging them to get through their terror barriers. Now, when you're in the interview seat or the host seat, as you know, it's like people are coming with a bundle of fears. Like they know they're going to say the wrong thing. They're worried about impressing you. Oh, yeah. Then there's an audience. Oh, then it's going to be out there in the world. And part of your job as a host is to get that person feeling calm and feeling centered and being honest, because that's what journalism should be all about, is
Hmm.
getting that honesty out there and telling a real story. And I mean, God bless all my coaches at CBC who helped me with that, because I know your question was what was transferable. This is one of the things that wasn't transferable. In business, you learn to put on this facade. Oh, I'm in business. I'm so great. You hide behind titles like consultant and global and la 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 la. And it's all a mask. And that's what the people at CBC taught me, is that they wanted to strip all of those things away in us first. So not that we can expose people, but that people, if you're authentic, people feel authentic. Example being, I used to speak in high level language because, and I realized, oh, maybe it's a defense mechanism. It's like, okay, if I come up with a encyclopedia that I'm reciting as English, maybe you won't mess with me in a boardroom.
Yeah.
Something like it's stupid, really. And at CBC, they're like, none of that. Plain language. It should be easy for any person to understand exactly what you're saying in as little words as possible, and then silence so that other person can respond as clearly and take as much space as they need. So I would say, to answer your question, love of people. Sorry, Ryan.
All good. Don't worry about that.
Love of people, curiosity. Even though I'm in business, I feel like I'm quite artsy, and I felt like with me and my clients, we were creating art together. We were telling their story through business and helping them express themselves, especially when coming from another country or even like, another community in Manitoba. Like if you're from the res in some place in Manitoba, you come to Winnipeg, it is not the same. It's very different culturally, and allowing them to express themselves. And I feel like that love of art helped me, because I learned that at CBC, you're producing, even though it is a story and it's supposed to be exactly the thing, but you're producing it. You use sound, you use texture, use silence. to tell these stories. And so that kind of like that wanting to make art and create in business helped me in journalism as well.
I mean, a lot of people probably don't look at business from an art perspective. That's probably why you were able to transition into that role so effectively. And as you're mentioning, break down those barriers, take away that facade from both yourself and your guest, because that's where you get the most authentic experiences. That's how you find out someone's feelings. When I'm having conversations with people, I'm like, hey, this is how I feel. I've been talking with ministers, and I'll be straight up with them. Hey, I understand this policy that you're passing, but I feel like it doesn't go all the way. Like, let's break that down. Let's talk about that. And, there are times where, especially when it comes to politicians, sometimes you'll get the real person under there and you're like, okay, I can vibe with this. I can get behind what this person is talking about. Or other times you just get those talking points and you don't get the human behind it. And I think that's the goal of journalism, to find the humanity in the story.
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. And you know what? And on that, I definitely dealt with that in terms of politicians, not so much on the weekend morning show. I'm supposed to be light, but that's the thing. Nobody wants, and they should hear this too. Nobody wants your talking points. People want to feel you and understand you because we connect with other human beings. Obviously, they're in a tough spot because also, I learned this in journalism. You say one wrong thing and you will be just
raked over the coals.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I understand why things are so manufactured depending on industry. But at the end of the day, people want to connect with people. They really do.
And especially in like politics recently, at like looking at the United States, looking here in Canada, people want someone to connect to. They want someone who's going to hear them, because for a lot of Manitobans and Canadians as a whole, we're experiencing a lot of hardships and there's a lot of fear out there. And we want someone who acknowledges that fear and has solutions towards it, not just, hey, here's the list of things I think you want to hear.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think that just got exacerbated, at least in my perspective, during the pandemic. I felt a massive change in Manitoba, like massive, night and day. I always said on our license plate, it says friendly Manitoba. And somehow that just got forgotten in fear and in mistrust. And I think in general confusion as well. And I think making that career transition at CBC at that time, you were able to see that people really needed something to cling to, for better or for worse. People clung, if you will, to different philosophies or different ideas but they needed something. And, I hope that we, as time goes on, we're able to really rebuild our communities and my goal was always to end any kind of divisiveness. It doesn't matter if you and I have a different opinion of something. Let's talk it out, we don't need to move further away. If somebody is scaring you, or I mean, not physically, but they're scaring you in terms of, don't lean in and they're physically scaring you. But for me, I really always hope to cultivate a place of speaking to each other. We don't have to agree, but I do need to respect you as a fellow human being. And it was tough during those years a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, we're still seeing those struggles, especially online, like with the parental rights movement, how it was co-opted, manipulating and taking advantage of minority communities, and the fear that they might have, the misunderstandings that they might have around trans identity and different sorts of 2S LGBTQ plus issues, that they're like, I've never had this conversation at home. And now people are telling me my kid who's a boy is going to be turned into a girl at school. From a parent's perspective, yeah, that might be scary, but that's the important about having conversations, having okay, what does this actually mean? What does it look like? Who are saying these things? And yeah, I think during the pandemic, people have lost that sense of community. And I think part of it also has to do, the world is a crazy, strange place, and it's really hard to understand how we can fit into things on the day to day. And if you can't understand, like, the technology I'm using here, I don't exactly know how it all works. Like, how does this thing work? How does the microphone work exactly? And if you don't understand things, it might be easier to be like, oh, conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Because, if nothing makes sense, maybe these some things can ground me. That's just my own conspiracy theory that I have.
Oh yeah. I mean, as much as somebody, you could read in a textbook, they could say this is the answer, that's the answer. At the end of the day, it needs to resonate with you. And I think that it was a time where it's just like there was so much that wasn't resonating with people. And then as soon as you asked a question, this is what I don't like. You ask a question or you show that you're uncomfortable or uncertain with something. And instead of being able to live in a kind of like a kind of gray area, no, you need to pick a side. You need to pick a side. It's almost like, this kind of gang warfare thing. And no, I'm kind of happy in the middle, just figuring it out. And I think, unfortunately, like, as you mentioned, in situations like that, people, there's a lot at play. I think sometimes people are getting manipulated, and that's one way or the other way. And I think at the end of the day, if you really realize that we're all humans, we have some basic needs. One of them is to be loved, and people want acceptance and to be cared for and to be loved and to be safe. If you realize that that's a human right, like if you start there with any subject matter, not just what you brought up, but any subject matter, I think it starts better. It's going to sound super cheesy, but it's like, our emotions come from a place of fear or a place of love, right? If you realize that you're kind of being guided by this all the time, first of all, you're going to feel like garbage. And secondly, you're not going to be making choices out of strength. And I won't ever tell anybody what to think or what to do, but I know, especially while I was at CBC, and I'm sure you feel, or you can tell me how you feel. You can have a difference of opinion. But when I was in the host chair, you realize how much responsibility you hold. One of the things that I developed as like a kind of like a life tenant is I am not going to do anything that can cause divisiveness. Like, I want to be a bridge as a human being. And maybe I can't do it in every single area, but I really saw some of those tensions really come to the forefront, especially in media. And it's like, wait a second, didn't we all get along like not too long ago? Was I like missing something?
Being in media and being a host, it is a huge responsibility because you're the one curating that experience and creating that opportunity for people to talk. And yeah, for myself, I want to be right when it comes to discussions. And that's something I'm working on myself a lot, to let go when I'm like, oh, I think you're wrong. I want to argue with you and debate you. It's like, okay, let's take it down. I don't have to be right in that moment. Let's just talk. Why do you feel this way? Let's walk it through. I'll let you know how I feel about these subjects. And like, okay, let's come to a consensus. Or maybe at the end, we haven't finalized or figured out what those different, like, come to terms on those differences, but at least we can be like, you know what? That's okay. I understand you're a person in there. I hope you understand I'm a person here as well.
Yes, 100%. And you know what? Don't be so hard on yourself either. Like, Ryan, where would we learn these skills? I don't feel like they're being cultivated in school. I don't feel like they're being cultivated. A whole bunch of people with different opinions are not being put in a room and being told, figure it out. We're being told, stay away from, don't sit on my lunch desk, don't talk to me. If we, so if we had those skills a little bit more in the past, we're kind of losing them. And unless you really lean into that. And so good for you for one, recognizing it, and two, kind of pushing yourself. And I think it's almost like taking your ego out of it. Like, it's not going on the emotional roller coaster. It's like, I can hear a thing and just hear it, and not having to like feel good about it or feel bad about it.
Definitely. I've had moments where I'm like afterwards like, wow, I was completely unreasonable. I let my emotions get the better of me just because I was frustrated with the person. No, 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 no. Let it go, learn. And I think that's just the growing experience of being human, understanding what our faults are and taking moments to grow. And I'm going to falter here and again, but that's okay. That's what it is to be human. But it's all about moving forward towards the betterment of both yourself and the people around you.
Couldn't agree more.
And I think that's what ties like yourself as too. I feel like we're a kindred spirit
Yeah.
in a way, whether it was business consulting, a host at CBC, or now is just a host in general. It takes wanting to be involved with people, a sense of community, wanting to, as you mentioned, being that bridge between people. And potentially there's opportunities where, maybe something happens and you're there and you can foster that little bit of dialogue between people and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, it's like right now is just kind of such an interesting time because I have all these ideas, which can sometimes be a battleground in itself because what to do next? Like there's so many different things, right? As time gone on, I've kind of tried to define myself less by titles, and define myself more by values. This is a long journey coming. I'm not trying to sound like, reach nirvana.
I've gone to the mountaintop. I have found my Zen.
Yeah, it's not quite. But what I will say is that I think growing up, and I think this is part of the newcomer experience, is part of the second generation newcomer experience. And maybe even just being kind of like a 90s baby. Well, I'm born in 85, but 90s-ish.
Close enough, right?
Close enough, right? Where I think there was this time we existed in, you tell me if you feel the same way, where parents were almost like raising these little status symbols. It's like, oh, they're in this level of basketball, or they're in this doing this, and they're in, and so where in the past kids would just play basketball just for fun, but now everything has become this thing that you do to achieve something, and I totally fell into that into my teenage years and everything like that, and so I was definitely, even though I'm not like kind of status when it comes to shopping or whatever, I was status when it came to job and when it came to my career. And it can lead you to make some really poor choices or choices for the wrong reasons. I kind of always liken it to, we can climb up any ladder. You want to make sure that it's leaning against the view that you want at the end of the day, not just to climb the ladder, just to climb it. And I definitely got myself in the way of that. And I think now I'm trying to look at the world, choosing experiences, choosing things to do because it really means something inside, or it really is helping to serve in a certain type of way versus like just puffing up my chest and being like, oh, like I'm the big dog. I'm me. Like I totally fell into that. And the problem is you get to the top of the ladder and you feel like empty. It's like gross.
It's fueling of the ego, not fueling of your core, yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's
not finding that balance. Interesting.
Not finding that balance. And it can happen so easily. And as we're all here on this earth for a certain amount of time. You don't want to waste any of your time, energy. Like people talk about wasting money, but the biggest resource is time. And I just realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, like how many years and how many units of energy have I spent focused on things that really didn't matter? And you would have been so much further away, and it would have been so much easier ride if you would have picked something or spent the time even finding the thing that really is your purpose here in the world. And so my whole philosophy, I went on a huge tangent, but this whole philosophy is like not being about title. And I think it's helping me get away from some of that other stuff.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. And I think for a lot of young people, they get wrapped up in it of like, what's my career going to be? How am I going to get that title? Oh, I want to be X, Y, Z sort of thing, instead of finding, what is the core? What is it that you need in your soul to thrive and grow? And not to say that accomplishments aren't fantastic. It is great when you're able to achieve something. You'd be like, yes, I did that, but not let that moment define you. It's like people who peaked in high school, not to say that they don't have the opportunity to grow now, but they say, oh yes, high school is the best time of my life. It's like, that's a very small part of your life. There's so much more to do yet. Don't define yourself by that moment.
Gosh, I know hate is a strong word, but I hate, Ryan, when people say that, oh, these are the best years of your life. And they're like the beginning years. You don't even know what the heck is going on. Hormones are all over the place. Like those were not my best years. Thank the Lord. And I'm glad, I wish they would have been better, but high school was such an interesting time for me. And to think that if I believed that those were the best years, that just sets people up for failure.
Yeah, you're limiting yourself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's funny. I really hope that phrase has gone out of style. I don't I would love it because it's just I've always thought when I lived in the States, they said that all the time. I lived in Minnesota. And they always say, they're like, oh, these are the best years. And, the whole high school yearbook thing where they're like, you're the best this, you're the best that, you're going to grow up to be this. And I'm just like, why are we doing this? This is stupid.
Yeah, looking back on my high school self, it was like, that is not the best me that there could be. Like I just hit 30 this past December. And you know what? I'm really feeling it. I feel like I'm currently on a journey and I'm enjoying where it's going.
Good. I'm happy. So you didn't get that like, oh, I'm sad because I'm 30. Good.
No, like my thought process was, you know what? I'm hitting 30. I am getting older. I'm starting to feel it in my joints and everything. But you know what? That's okay. That means I just need to make the most out of this time and start taking things that are going to make me happy in the long run, not just be like, okay, it's behind me. It's like, no. I have way more to come, and I might as well work towards setting those goals to see where I'm going to be in 5 years, 10 years. Who knows?
Who knows? I was listening to like part of maybe this is me getting older too. But in the morning, I have my kumbaya time, and I write in my journal, I meditate, and when I'm cleaning up or when I'm cooking, I listen to different like kind of wellness podcasts. So there was this one. I was listening to a gentleman and he was saying to the listeners that in some indigenous cultures, they say that you don't get out of they don't call you an adult until you're 50.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, that is actually so rad when you think about it, because, you've been through all these major transitions. Your brain is definitely like, it's mature now. You can make all types of life mistakes. You would have had kids. You would have understood the world better. And now you're kind of like going into adult,
yeah. It's a major shift at that point. You've lived a significant portion of your life at that point, and now you can transition into this next moment.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think it kind of is this, an idea that anyone could think they're old. Yes, your body is changing. I felt it when I turned 31. That was I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I noticed it. I've been doing more exercises in my shoulder recently. I'm like, oh, this is not what it felt like in my 20s.
No, it's great, but now's the time to really get in a routine. I'm starting to as well. I always used to do cardio and dance, but I would never really work on weights. I'm having a birthday really shortly. It rhymes with Schmurdy9. And I'm gonna be, you start losing your muscle mass. And so I think like in terms of everyone who's listening and stuff, like putting that time for like wellness, not for a goal, not for anything, just because this is an investment in myself. We really need to get into that, like making that time out at this point, because it's not all downhill from here, but there are some challenges we'll face if we're not really making sure that our temple is together.
Exactly. If you don't make decisions now, it's going to be way harder. Like if I didn't start what I was doing now, I only started at when I hit 40, that's way larger hill to climb.
Yes, no, absolutely. But I mean, it also good for you in terms of just owning it. Like you've made I always feel better about a birthday when I know in the year that's passed, I kept on going. Like I've been making progress. If I was sitting still for a whole entire year and I found myself in the same spot, Those are the only times when I'm like, that kind of sucks. But if I'm moving forward, I feel a lot better. And it sounds like you really have. So good for you.
Yeah, I'm taking those steps. So we'll see where I am next time we have a conversation.
100%. Yeah.
Keisha, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Always a pleasure. Where can people go to find out more about yourself?
Well, thank you so much. I've had such a great time. And if any of the listeners want to have a great time with me and any of the things that I do, you can find me on KeishaPaul.com. You can always email me, Keisha, Keisha, at KeishaPaul.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Chat with Keisha. And then there's LinkedIn too. You link and you find me LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on that thing all the time. So yeah, let's have some fun. I host, I produce, I create, and I consult. And I would love to work with anyone who wants to work with me.
Have any stories you'd like us to share or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media, reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.